first, what we're going to do today. So I'm going to do a really quick introduction. I'm going to fly through that. Then we're going to get into some tips and tricks. So this is agnostic to Lumira or whatever product you're using. We're going to walk through some really helpful tips and tricks for doing data visualization. After that, we're going to take a look at different resources that could help you out. And again, we're very interactive, so if there's some resources that you find very helpful and you want to share, we'd love to hear about them. And then we're going to take a brief intermission, and we're going to talk about why all this stuff matters. And then we're going to go into some hands-on with SAP Lumira at the end. Now, again, I'm a little bit under the weather, so my deepest apologies if I sound a little nasally or anything. But we're gonna get through this, and it's going to be absolutely awesome. So just again, as background, I did my undergraduate degree in animation at BYU. Here's a little assignment I did in my first class of a bug climbing through a window for some reason. And after that, I went into product management, and I got to draw occasionally. Here's something I drew when I was a product manager for something we were working on, but not as much drawing, much more product management and product design. And then I ended up getting my MBA at Duke. I do this as well. I'm just going to show you pictures of my artwork today. And so I've got a business background, an art background, and how that ended up playing into what I did for my day-to-day work was I ended up doing quite a bit of data visualization and thinking deeply about the metrics that we're using and helping people with those things. I've designed, I don't know, at this point, probably hundreds of KPIs, dashboards, reports, things like that. So let's go ahead and let's get started on just some tips and some tricks. And we're gonna do like a total house makeover. And this is our default dashboard. Has anyone seen a dashboard that kind of looks like this? You've got all sorts of content on there. It's a little bit busy. It's a little hard to tell what the story is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start cleaning this up one piece at a time. So I'm going to show you my process, and then we're going to talk about what other things we could possibly do to this. So first thing that I always do is I just start getting rid of the chart junk. And if you haven't heard of that term, chart junk is all the extra lines that are really not necessary. So you may not even notice that the lines have gone away, but yeah, we had all these extra lines. There's extra cross lines in the charts. There's border boxes. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to get rid of that first and foremost. Now, it may look a little bit convoluted now without the divider lines, but we're going to go back through and we're going to clean that up in just a little bit. Now, the next thing that I do is I get rid of everything that's 3D. So if you look at this and you look at the third quarter versus the fourth quarter, on the pie chart now, it's easier to tell which one's larger, but let's take a look at this one. Which one looks bigger to you? For me, when I look at this, I honestly can't tell. I think maybe the fourth quarter is actually larger. So when you do things in 3D, it really obscures the information. And same thing with when you look at sales by type. This is just, I don't even know why this visualization exists, right? But there's this weird candy corn one that you can do, and the base is larger than the top. So it really skews any concept of proportion. Because look at this, actually the green at the top for October was larger. I never would have really guessed that, looking just at the visualization. This seems really obvious, right, that we're not going to use 3D, but it's still worth mentioning, because every once in a while I'll see someone where their customer is like, oh, it looks gorgeous, I really want something 3D, push back, and just tell them, no, you don't want to do anything in 3D. Okay, the next thing is we're going to obscure the unnecessary. So we had this list of customers by date with complaint type, and this is actually probably the most common thing that I see with report design, is that people have done all this work, they've collected all of this data, and what they really want to do is they want to show every single piece of data that they can in their report. Or if they want to just show too much of it. But when we're showing this to like an executive or someone who's got so many different priorities, we want to limit it down to really just the top 4 or 5 metrics. And we just want to show them those. So if there is a need to have that additional information, what I normally do is if I'm designing a dashboard, I'll have it as a pop-up. If I'm designing a report, I'll have it as a second page. If I'm doing it in Lumira, I could do it as like a completely separate story or as a backup page. There's ways to do it where the information's still there. You just tier the information. So you hide that detailed information a little bit further behind. And that way everyone feels happy. It's like, okay, I still have the data if I need it, but it's just not going to take over the front page. So after we have obscured the unnecessary, and this itself is kind of a process sometimes, is sitting with them and talking with them and saying, no, really, what are the metrics that drive your business? Let's get down to those. So this is probably one of the most important aspects, is just simplify, simplify, simplify. So after we've done that, now we're going to focus on telling a story. Again, these executives have very limited periods of time, and they just want to be able to act on things. So they need to not do any interpretation. Your data needs to tell them how to think and what to do. So when I looked at this before, a lot of it's going to be just changing our chart types. So when I look at this, first off, pie charts never really work for me because there's too many things going on inside of a pie chart. Unless it's like 2 to 3 metrics, I personally don't use pie charts. So when I look at the cost one, the first thing that pulls out to me is that first, second, third, fourth quarter. This is the least effective use of a pie chart, right? Because if it's something that's time-based, I want to show it linearly. And so I'm going to go ahead and put it down onto an actual line, and look what happens now. A story pops out. So we can watch that our costs are now decreasing. Think about how long it would have taken for someone to figure that out just looking at this pie chart. Now, there's a number of good best practices of which charts to use in different settings. Like, for instance, if you're doing anything geographical, you're going to want to use a map or something that emotes geo. If you're doing something that's time-based, you're going to want to use something that's like a trend line or something like that. If you're doing comparisons, you're going to use bars. There's all these rules about it, but you don't really have to know them. Just go through and play around with the visualizations and switch through the visualizations until you find the ones that work for that particular chart. And so we've gone ahead, we've switched some things. We also changed out the sales by type one, where we put them into bars next to each other, because stacking them really didn't make sense because we couldn't compare across easily. And then the other thing is we have an aversion to putting numbers on reports sometimes. We think we have to, quote unquote, visualize everything. But that's not what people really want for effective data. Sometimes they just want to see the actual number. So if any of you are sports fanatics, anyone watching cricket, basketball, baseball, whatever, and you go to a stats website for it, how many charts and graphs do you see when you hit that website? So think about that. The people who are the most psychotic about data, which are probably our sport fanatics, they just want to see numbers. So if you go to ESPN right now and you go underneath stats, it's going to be actually hard for you to find a data visualization. Everything's going to be number-based. And that's an important lesson to us, is when we want to create something really effective, it's totally fine to err on the side of just numbers, 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 and showing them the numbers. So okay, now that we've told this story, we're going to now start thinking big, little, and small. This is where we're getting into the actual design part. Again, I'm sharing with you my process and my thoughts. If there's anything that comes up where you want to kind of broaden out the conversation and share your own suggestions, I highly recommend it. Let us know in the chat. Share what helps for you and what works for you as well. Okay, so now I'm thinking big, little, and small. So the idea is we're going to focus top left-hand corner. I'm in the U.S. I'm coming from a Western perspective, but top left-hand corner is my most important area. So I'm going to say, my goal for the month and what I actually achieved is my number one most important thing. So I'm going to move that item to the top left-hand corner, and then I'm going to read left to right and then down the page. And that's where I'm going to structure my content. I'm going to make things change size just to create visual interest and to create importance. So you see that I've restructured it quite a bit from here to here. Now, if we go back a couple slides, you remember that it was kind of annoying when we got rid of the border lines at this point because it was hard to see, which key applies to what's going on. But now that we've really started to simplify this down, this is starting to work. I'm starting to be able to get places with this. So after you think big, little, small, and you're going through that, the next thing that you're going to do is you're just going to try to focus on the data. So a lot of times the default charts that you'll receive, like when you format a chart, the focus will be on the axis labels for some reason, which really I don't care about the axis as much as I want to see what is the data telling me story-wise. So I see this a lot where the default of the application will use black as the axis labels, or it'll be large and bold. And then if you look at this one, I mean we are kind of pushing an extreme example, but if you look at this one and you kind of blur your eyes as you're looking at the screen, what pops to you? For me, it's the $10, the first quarter, the second quarter. That's what pops for me when I blur my eyes looking at this screen. And that's not what we want, right? What we want is when you're blurring your eyes, that what's popping the most is the data and the trend, that you're able to see really quickly, where is my data, how am I performing? So after we've focused on the data and we've got that story really, really clear, the next thing that we're going to do is change out our colors. Now, colors are difficult for some of us. If you have that friend who wears mismatching clothes, if you are that friend who wears mismatching clothes, if you're that person who painted the wrong wall in the house and now everything looks like it's clashing and people come over and say, yeah, it's great. Okay, you need to choose better colors. And luckily there's things to help us. So there's a full color theory of why, you know what I mean? Things actually don't pair together. You're actually supposed to be using certain colors in certain settings, right? So with that color theory, instead of having to learn it, you can always use a website like Adobe Color. So if you go to Color, and James is pointing out something really good, which is, and let me hit that in just a moment, which is color blindness. So if we go to Adobe Color is going to pull together colors for you. So if you choose one color, it'll tell you what colors you can use with it in an analogous or a monochromatic or a triad kind of way. So Adobe Color is a great resource, completely free, color.adobe.com. And I couldn't speak highly enough of it. It really helps avoid mistakes color-wise. Now, color blindness. How do you deal with color blindness? One thing that a lot of people do is so this report actually I designed years ago. Maybe you'll see I'm going to get us into a more updated version of it. But you want to make sure that if someone's color blind, certain colors are going to read the same to them. It's going to look very, very similar to them. And a good way to check it is what you want is to have enough difference in actual brightness of the color. So that way they can see really clearly this is darker than this. And so like when you see advanced data visualization, the true experts in the newspapers and other things, they won't even use color. They'll do black, white, and shades of gray, or they'll do, crosshatch bars. There's no question, there's no confusion what each one is related to. And so the other thing that you could do though, if you want to use color, is you have to make sure there's enough contrast in the brightness of it. So that way they can read it and tell still, okay, these are two different colors. I can tell for sure because one's really bright and one's not as bright. So that's one way to address it. Again, if anyone else has some good suggestions on the line of how to address color blindness, please let us know in the chats. We're always learning about this. Okay, so we've gone ahead, we've chosen some different colors, etc. Now this is one of, again, the most important things. Other than simplifying, this is probably the other most important thing in my universe, which is making sure you have goals. So was it good that costs were lowering? When our sales were above 4, was that good or bad? Like, we need to know how we're supposed to actually feel about the things that we're doing, and we want to make it really, really quick. One of the most effective ways to do that is just to add goal lines onto everything that you're seeing. By adding a goal line onto things, you're going to start being able to say, okay, and this is how I did compared to my goal. And now the data has really changed, hasn't it? From something where you can't really read, well, did I want costs to drop, or what did I want to, like, am I meeting my sales? I have no idea. Now we're getting something that's a lot more clear about what's actually going on. Same thing with, I'll now start using color, but I'm going to be using it very carefully. So I'll say, because they can read something's up with this color-wise on the 832, and you can see we now have this really bright red 832 that's telling us there's a problem here. And that's where my eye hopefully is now going. If I blur again, my number one problem is the fact that I did not meet my customer goal for January, and I missed it by quite a bit. And then Jan is pointing out that there's another nice website for finding color palettes, and colorbrewer2.org, so you've got another one in there. Now I'm kind of finishing up on my process, and now I'm going to reintroduce space dividers. So I never want to start with space dividers. I want to simplify everything. Now I'm kind of reintroducing space dividers. So I'm going to put this bar down below, and I'm going to maybe put something out on a tile on the left-hand side. Tiles are so popular right now. And so I kind of have this like this dashboard now that I'm done with this report that I can look at, and comparing it to where we were, I think we've done a pretty good job, right? So we had like the pie charts, everything like that. Oh, this looks so much better. I'm so happy. And but here's the thing. So when I created this a couple years ago, and styles have changed, haven't they? This still looks good in my opinion, but it just doesn't look modern. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff, which is now how do I look really modern really fast? And I literally took like maybe 20 minutes and updated my styles on this deck, and I want to show you how you can too, to make your stuff look really modern and cool with extremely low amounts of effort. Boom. Okay, so now we're modern apparently. So what I've done in this situation, the number one trick is I've gone to lighter fonts. So this is the new cool, is go with as light of a font as you possibly can. If you go to apple.com, you go to microsoft.com, you go to Google for Android or anything, you're going to see everyone's now adopting light versions of fonts. So if you're on your PC, that's going to be your Calibri Light is your default version of a beautiful, nice, light font that you can use today. If you're on a Mac, you can use Helvetica Light today. Alternately, you can go and download additional fonts that will show you. But like just for a really standard, okay, if we could ban someone from the group, Jan accidentally said Comic Sans. So that points out a really good thing. Thank you, Derek, for banning Jan. So he's making a joke, yeah. So there are definitely bad fonts that you can choose, like Comic Sans. If you're using Papyrus, if you're using Comic Sans, these are kind of like the no-no fonts of like any design world. And again, Papyrus is one that a lot of people think they feel pretty comfortable with using. Don't use it. Don't use Papyrus. Don't use Comic Sans. If anyone else knows of any equal offenders, let us know in the chat. But yeah, you don't want to use Comic Sans. You want to use something that's light, airy, a nice font. And then here's another trick that like as a designer you should be aware of. Never use bold. Seems strange, right? But actually, when you use a bold version of a font, it's actually not a bold version of a font sometimes. What it does is it takes the existing font and it thickens it. And when you thicken a font, you actually thicken its curves and you make it harder to read. Fonts actually have a bold variant, like you could use Arial or Arial Black, or some fonts actually have, when you select bold, it actually chooses from the font family its bold variation. But a lot of fonts don't. So what the best approach? Just avoid bold altogether and everything will look better. So again, number one trick, we just did light fonts. It looks so much better just going light fonts. We also have started minimizing color. So that's also really popular right now. We're going more monochromatic. We're getting rid of as much color as humanly possible. So remember we had bold and it had like blue for the headers. Now it's black, simple. We've simplified this down dramatically. We're also, we've even further lightened up our access labels and titles. It's looking pretty sharp now. And again, people are insanely in love with tiles, I guess. So we put everything on tiles because that's the current design that I'm seeing a lot of, is putting things on tiles. And again, if you have your own thoughts about this, we'd really love to hear it in chat. So feel free to let us know in the chat of your thoughts of how kind of modernize your designs. Now I'm going to show you another variation, which is over here. Same thing. I've simplified it even further, and this is where I'm seeing a lot of just like color blocks, where I'm going to use like a pretty saturated color that's pretty poppy and powerful, and then I'll do like a white invert for my actual graph. And then and I'll just use color blocks to break up my page. Yeah, so and this is kind of the trend now, is going to this really metro flat UI design is what we're seeing a lot of. So again, here we were, from here to here. Oh, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. I'm focusing on the data. And this isn't perfect, right? But what we're trying to do is we're just trying to stress the core concepts of what we're going to walk through on a process level. Now, for color, so Jan's pointing out something really good. So with SAP, we actually have this website called Brand Tools that you can access, and it actually gives us our branding and color guidelines. If you want your report, your dashboard, whatever you're designing to look really good, I highly recommend finding out, does your company have corporate colors? Use those corporate colors. It'll instantaneously create authority to whatever metrics you're showing. And I'm going to show that as well in when we get into Lumira. Another trick is you just simply put your corporate logo somewhere, and it's going to look amazing. So Brian's asking, were these examples created with Lumira? The ones I'm showing you right now were actually just created quickly in PowerPoint. I'm going to show you a Lumira example. We could have created this in Lumira really easily. And so I'm going to show you a Lumira example in just a moment. We're going to kind of do the same thing. But first, let's walk through some resources. So first off, if you're living in Excel, Microsoft actually has resources. If you go to office.microsoft.com/templates, and we're going to have a list of all these resources, but you can actually get some pretty nice PowerPoint templates in there. You'll notice they use pie charts every once in a while, but they still have some good things if you just want to get started. Don't be afraid of a template. All good designers steal. So feel free to do that. Now, if you've been looking at this and you're thinking, you know, I kind of get these ideas already, and I'd say actually I'm probably the professional in my group, then where you need to go is information aesthetics. Information aesthetics is like the high-powered, gorgeous, complex visualizations. And this is where the true data geeks hang out, is in information aesthetics, a fantastic website. Now, I use a lot of photos for me, I do a lot of presentations, and I have data in the presentations, and so I use a lot of photos to kind of help tell the story. And I didn't know about this, but this is kind of new. Flickr has done a much better job of categorizing all of its content. So if you want to grab some public domain photos, you can put them into your presentations from Flickr now. And you can also, do things where you have to do attribution, like just say this is the person who created it. So there's a lot of websites like this. There's Morgfile also. There's a number of them where you can use them for commercial purposes, and you can have some photography in what you're doing. Keep in mind that not all of those things that get uploaded means that it's actually literally public domain, or that it's actually because people will re-upload each other's work and stuff like that. So you have to be really careful. It's better usually to pay and go through a provider if you're a large company. But if you're a very small shop and you're willing to take a risk and it's a small project or it's internal, then I highly recommend, Flickr, Morgfile, etc. These are some great resources for you. Google itself, if you do a search on Google, under the search tools, you can even choose the type of licensing that's available on the image. And pretty much most things on Wikipedia you're safe with using as well. Also, if you're using Lumira, there's actually the ability to insert an image natively from Fotolia. We have a license there. So you can use Fotolia right within Lumira, and that's really nice. Font Shop is great. Font Shop has a number of free fonts, and you can also buy fonts that are well designed. And then Flat Icon. I go to Flat Icon at least once a week. So Flat Icon will give you if you're doing vector-based, if you're doing like infographics and you want a really high-quality image in it, or you want fonts, and you want something that's really clean and modern, Flat Icon is your best friend. It's always nice to put a couple of these nice, modern, clean-looking fonts in with what you're doing. So these also require attribution, or you have to purchase them. But great website, and I do believe it when it says it's the largest database of free vector icons. And you can download it in all sorts of different formats. And Scott's pointing out cooltext.com. Now, another thing to point out is for data visualizations, you can also use a bunch more in the extensions library gallery in Lumira. So inside of Lumira, you can actually add an extension. It pulls you to an SCN page, and you can install extensions for Lumira that add additional visualization capabilities. And then if you saw this whole thing and you were a total hipster and you thought, oh, I knew all of this, and you really want to get into the nuts and bolts and you want to get very, very technical into data visualization, I recommend Edward Tufte. He does quite a bit with very theoretical of why things look the right way and how to make them look the right way. So Edward Tufte is as they say here by John Turkey, a tour de force. So he's amazing. Okay, so let's change gears, and what we're going to focus on now is why this matters, why data visualization is like such a skill to have, and why it's so good that you're on the line. And you can use this example to the next person you're talking to, and you're telling them why it's important to spend the extra 5 minutes to make everything look right. So this is from 1854, and it is people who have died from cholera. And back in this time period, the cholera was just killing off so many people. And in fact, cholera continued to be a threat. I mean, even up into, I think it was 1900 to 1920, it killed 8 million people in India. Cholera was just an absolute nightmare. And what had been the dominant theory was that cholera was caused by this miasma, or this fog, and that the disease would exist in this fog that would come through. And that actually the fog was related to your personal righteousness, that it would come and it would find the wicked, and the wicked would get cholera and they would die from it. And so there was this guy by the name of Jon Snow. So if you watch Game of Thrones, it's the exact same person, no difference. No, not at all. So this is he's actually considered the father of the study of diseases, because Jon Snow, he did all of these reports, all this analysis, and he was 100% certain that cholera in this one outbreak in 1854 was not caused by some fog in the air, but it was literally caused by this one pump of water. That was it. And he had data up, down, left, right. And he took it and he tried to show it to everyone. And people were like just how it is when you show someone a report or something. They were kind of agreeable, and they were like, yeah, okay, we'll kind of follow your suggestion. So finally they removed the pump handle, but that didn't really solve the worldwide issue. And yeah, it started cleaning up what was happening. But John is a good scientist. He had already told them, you know what? When you remove the handle, this is already tapering off. So we're not, like the difference would have been negligible. So we could have gone for another 100 or 200 years with believing that cholera was like caused in the air. But there was actually this Reverend Henry Whitehead who just absolutely disagreed with John. And he told John that, you know, he was leading people astray and that he was doing an awful bad thing. And he tried to disprove John Snow. And so John Snow took a really mature approach, which is he tried to instead get Henry Whitehead, this Reverend, on his side. And the way that he did it, the way that he was able to convince the Reverend that it was indeed actually in the air, I mean in the water, not in the air, was this one data visualization. So he showed this, and this is what convinced Henry Whitehead. So Henry Whitehead saw this visualization, the picture of the pump, and saw the stacked cells of the deaths that were near the pump. And you could see the fact that the brewery, where it had its own pump, no one died. And you could see that other areas, there was no death. And as we got further away into where there were other pumps, there were no deaths anymore, right? But it's this pump that caused it. And what changed was the Reverend Henry Whitehead ended up, from this visualization, totally understanding it and becoming one of the best advocates and partnered with John Snow. And he's actually the person who performed the interview that found out that there had been a dirty diaper that had been flushed into the right next to the well, and that's what had caused the outbreak of cholera. So Reverend Henry Whitehead, together with John Snow, are the people who unlocked this. And this was the seed that began the entire study of germs and diseases and things like that, and understanding it from a completely different level. This work has saved millions, if not billions, of lives. This data visualization is probably one of the most powerful visualizations on the planet today. And so data visualization has the power to change data, line data, into something that's actually powerful. And you think about how much it changes the way we view our world. This is Africa. Maps back in the day were not drawn true to size. They were drawn because they used to always be on that globe shape, and then they would flatten it out. And when you'd flatten out the map, you know what happened? Africa shrunk. So people had a completely weird perception of how large Africa was. So you should find an old map and see how big Africa is on an old flat map. It's actually this big, the size of China, United States, India combined. So these types of visualizations really help us see things in a brand new way. It changes how we think. You have the power with a data visualization to change how people actually think about their world. This is just a really beautiful visualization that shows a huge amount of information concisely. We could have done this through 16 charts, but instead I'm going to show it to you using just one. This is when Napoleon invaded Russia. You can see the size of his army on the left-hand side, and then you can see as they go and they get decimated going into Russia, and then you can see them on the way back and what they returned at. And at the bottom you can see the different temperatures at the different times, etc. This is a map. So I always knew that World War II was an intense experience and an intense time. This map shows London in every single location that was bombed during World War II. So why is this so effective, and why am I still hammering on this? It's because there's literally certain things that I can convey so much better visually than I can with text. Now, and this matters today. The reason why they're paying people so much money to do data visualization, etc., is because right now we can just keep mass amounts of data, and we're collecting so much. And with Internet of Things and with all of the different sensors and devices and everything, we just have so much data. Security logs, social, we have so much data. And so people are trying to visualize it, and those people are really changing how we do things. So this is, right now, this is the NBA, and you can see how they jump to, how you can see how well each player is going to perform in each quadrant of the court, etc. And this is not something that was just for like one game or one season. They've installed cameras in every single stadium. Here's SAP, where they did it for the World Cup. They said that this was actually one of the reasons they won the World Cup. And then instead of like, if you looked at like politics, how Obama's budget, like political conversations are being handled by data, the turning point in the world of in Bin Laden's death. This is social sentiment. This is millions of views, all aggregated together. And by the way, those were both done by D3, which also powers Lumira. We're almost done with our intermission. We're going to take a look at it in just a second. But then another thing is like public wireless. You can actually ping people's cell phones and figure out where they are, and you can show traffic flow within different locations. So some pretty powerful visualizations. Now, let's take a look at what we can do inside of Lumira. So Lumira, you can do your 3D pie chart. This is nice. I don't know why every visualization program, even the good ones, even the great ones like Lumira, has to have a 3D pie chart somewhere hidden in it. But so let me just really quickly tell you what Lumira is. The data visualization and data discovery product. It's meant to be where you really quickly can get insights about data. Chris Staber is a 0.5. I would prefer that in a fraction, please. And if I could get to a further, more finite decimal point, that'd be very helpful. I know Chris, so I'm allowed to give him. There we go. Derek is a 3.14. He's the pi number. Thank you, Derek, for the pi reference. Okay, so it looks like we're kind of all over the place on this one. We've got some people who are really good with it, which is good because we're going to get even into the visualizations also. So what I've done is I've opened up this spreadsheet of Titanic data. And then how it's structured in Lumira is you ingest all your data, you prepare it, you massage the data however you want to, and then you start visualizing it and you spin off visualizations. And it'll recommend visualizations over here to you, like, oh, you should try looking at it this way, you should try looking at it this way, which is really awesome. It's really quick and it animates back and forth. And I'm using 1.27, which is coming out I think in a week now. Is that right? Or 2 weeks?
It's roughly at the end of the month. So
roughly at the end of the month, I probably shouldn't have said anything, so let's keep that between us. But 1.27 is amazing, and it's got a lot of functionality and features that people have been asking for. So you may see me using some of this functionality in the demo today, where you're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Well, you'll be able to pretty soon. And then you just drag in your measures, you drag in your dimensions. It'll create your visualization, and you can do all sorts of different things with it. And then when you compose it, this is where it gets a little bit fun. We can create these gorgeous, gorgeous infographics. So these can be live, they can be published out, and it'll live update as the data is updated. So I've created this absolutely stunning Titanic by the numbers data visualization, right? So you can, editor, you can drag and drop pictures in. So I've drag and dropped this clip art kind of photo of the Titanic. I've done this really large, bold. So I'm obviously showing this as a bad example. We'll switch over in just a moment. But I got this large, bold Titanic thing. And then, so let's start thinking about it. So I want people to start kind of criticizing this. What are we trying to tell? That's our objective. Let's go to the story, and then the very first question is, what are we trying to actually tell people? Okay, so I'm going to show you what I mocked up yesterday. It was pretty quick though, so we can kind of hit it as well. And then I want you to be thinking also, if you're a Lumira Power user or even a basic user, I want you to be thinking what questions you have about Lumira with data visualization that we may want to answer as well. Format the pounds number to include the currency symbol with commas. Perfect, Ken. And that's important, right? Because like, why do I have to read total fare in British pounds? Can't it just say total fare and then have the British pound symbol there and then have commas? I mean, this doesn't even look like a currency when I first see it. Why do we need the total fare? What does it give us? Yeah, great point, great point. Okay, so I kept some of the data and I just redesigned it. I'm nervous because, like, again, it's not amazing, but here's a really quick thing I pulled up in, again, we're just using just Lumira. Lumira, as those of you who are power users, you could probably attest to this, Lumira is dramatically growing really, really quickly. And I was really impressed by everything I could do inside of it. There's a couple areas where I still hit some slight road bumps. I figured out how to do most of what I needed to do. But you'll see that this product is just growing massively every single day. Okay, so this kind of shows what we can do inside of Lumira, and this kind of shows how we can start applying some of these principles to Lumira. And I think we already covered this, but you can do a lot of things, like you can change it out and you can use a pictogram. So if I wanted to actually show the gender, I could actually choose a pictogram that showed airplanes or leaves, keys, and you can actually add your own, which is really nice. So you can put your own pictograms in here, and you can have those types of visualizations, which is really nice. And then another important thing to note is you can always click all the way down to the actual item and change its color. So if you want total control over it, because otherwise if you choose just the chart, you probably have already noticed this, you can do like, for the chart area, you can choose palettes for data. You can choose for the entire, let me see where it is. But you can choose for, why am I not finding it? But you'll see that there's like there's full palettes that you can choose from. But what I prefer to do is actually to go in and to choose my colors for each one to make sure I've got it the way that I want it. So this is pretty much the content we were going to cover, which is those main tips of data visualization. We were going to talk about why it matters, and then we're going to show in Lumira how to do things. Now, with our remaining time, we've got 8 minutes left. I'm going to quickly show you where to follow up if you have additional questions, etc. And then we're gonna just do questions for the last 8 minutes. So let me just show you really quick. I was trying to think of like a good neutral place I could post everything where everyone could chat, where everyone had an account. So I did LinkedIn. I figured everyone had LinkedIn. If you go to LinkedIn /in/starkjs, you'll find me. And on my page, I actually have posted, as of last night, a copy of the content from today with like just the tips. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick. So tips for creating effective and engaging data visualizations. So if you go into here, you'll see here's the tips from today. And so you can recap them here. So I was just trying to think of a good place to put it. But yeah, just go over to LinkedIn /in/starkjs. I'm probably going to post it on SCN later today as well. But if you need them sooner than that, you can jump over to LinkedIn and grab it. And yeah, add your own comments, add your own feedback on this type of stuff of what you feel works, what you don't. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take questions for the end of this. And so Ian is asking, Jacob, as an animation guide, do you have any guidelines on the use of animation in the reports? So I use the D3 library quite a bit, and the D3 library will create animations. Like I'll use HighChart and D3, and I'll animate transitions on animations. So I'll have it where like each of the columns grows, or when like, you know, different things happen with the charts, and it looks really pretty for like dashboards and things like that. In terms of if I'm doing a static report, no. I just want to show them the data. I don't really care about animation. I don't want to do anything other than just have them really quickly read the report. That's my #1 goal, read it quickly. And I also do, I wish I could show you because it's for confidential data, but I do a lot of infographics with it as well. And so I'll do like a full 2-minute video that like walks through infographic-wise things growing and shrinking. And that's just to tell the story, because remember, you're just trying to tell stories.